call this meeting to order, and tonight we have the workshop for an hour regarding our development code. Mr. Leclerc, I'll let you lead off.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, and two members of the audience. What you have in front of you tonight is a workshop in which we are giving you the first few chapters of hopefully what will ultimately be the new development code. What staff is asking you to do is, and what is recommended in the staff report, is go through the material. And the most, from my experience, the most expeditious way to do that is to start with Chapter 1, ask the Commission as a group, does anyone have questions or concerns about any parts of this chapter? You raise those parts, hopefully in sequence, but you raise those parts. You discuss them and you make a decision on them, and then you move on to the next chapter and follow that all the way through the sequence of chapters. I ask, however, that if it's simply typo or syntax or a number is incorrect because there was a change through the process of creating this, that you simply provide it to staff separate from this meeting, and we'll just do those typographical corrections through the process. With that, we'll just leave it up to the Commission to start at page 1 and start working forward. And
All right. Well, who wants to pick up here? We got purpose and applicability, purpose and intent. Who has any concerns about anything in here? How can we pick through this?
I'd like to mention item number 3, reduce hazards to the public resulting from the inappropriate location, use, or design of buildings and other improvements. On its face, it sounds good, but reduce hazards to the public, that would be like public property. When it's private property, the public's not really entitled to go on everyone's private property. So in some aspects, I think it's a little overreaching.
Okay. Anybody else have a similar comment or anything to say about that?
On that same item,
You're on mute.
I would like to have that changed to reduce hazards and adverse impacts, which, in my opinion, a hazard is one thing, and adverse impact includes other things such as noise, nuisances, and activities that are really not conducive to good order and discipline in the affected community.
Mr. Leclerc, can you clarify the methodology behind having this sentence in the development code?
the fundamental is you don't want to allow an activity to occur on a property that has, by its very nature or by the act of it being conducted, having impacts off-site. And that's the intent of this sentence.
Okay. So
that you have something to point to. For example, if somebody wants to develop a fireworks facility on a property, you don't have to enter onto that property for there to be a potential hazard from that. And it would have to be addressed in the review process of that. And you would address this concept by establishing conditions of approval on that review that would mitigate those potential impacts.
very well. I'm not hearing any support for your argument there, Mark. Is there anybody?
Well, the only reason I bring it up is as far as new development starting off on vacant land and going forward, it doesn't seem to be a problem. Sometimes it's being applied to something that was built, say, 30, 40 years ago when the codes were different. And even later on in this development code, it talks about going back and bringing some of those facilities or whatever into compliance, which would mean that now people have to spend all sorts of money to come up to our new codes, which, I mean, if it was built, say, in 1980 and is legal at the time, there should be no reason that they should have to spend a ton of money to come up to 2014 codes.
Unless they're asking for some change to it, their existing status wouldn't be challenged unless it's a specifically identified health and safety concern through fire, building and safety, health department, and so forth.
So it would be classified as legal non-conforming.
Yeah. Okay.
Nothing
Okay.
really happens until, say, you want to add on to the house.
Right.
You pull a building permit, and then you have to, then it invokes a requirement for that to be up to date, correct?
The new portion, yes. We more than likely, unless there's a specifically identifiable health and safety concern, wouldn't deal with the rest of the structure.
And there's actually even farther reaching codes at the state level. I mean, if you go into a home and you do a certain amount of upgrades inside the home, and the home is older than, I believe it's like 79, you have to go back through and update all your smoke detectors and things like that. So there's other things that happen. So I hear where you're coming from, Mark. You're trying to attack this at a global level, and I think we got to get down into some more of the deeper parts of the development code to try and pin down where this would apply and where it wouldn't apply.
No, I understand. I just wanted to bring it to everyone's attention. That is one of my concerns.
Okay.
As far as, this comment about adverse impacts, I guess I could support that. I mean, seems reasonable.
Yeah, I would agree. Is that too subjective? Or, I mean,
No.
okay.
Because it's subject to interpretation when you apply it anyway.
Okay. So it's going to be hazards and adverse impacts? All right. Going through page 2. Does anybody have any more concerns on 2? Go to 3. There are concerns on 3? Go on 3? Where you go?
Yeah, I'm in 3.
Okay, you have concerns there?
No, that they
Okay.
talked about everything else.
Okay.
Mine's mostly later, so.
Okay. 4? Earl?
My only comment was in item 3 to make shorter sentences.
Got it. You got it.
No, he's good.
Okay, yeah, and item 3 to just make it shorter sentences. This is something that I'll deal with Charles directly on, because most of my comments have to do with typos, syntax, things
Okay.
that would be better served if he and I just met.
All right. Mark, you have comments on 4?
No, it's all right.
Okay. All right, so we're moving into 9.04, administrative responsibility, the purpose and definitions of the planning agency. Any concerns?
A lot of these come right out of government code and so forth.
As we move through this, there's areas where we have worked in the past as far as like approval bodies for various stages of development, certain terminologies and things like that. Is it safe to say that that stuff is basically thrown out the window and we're starting
Yes.
with this?
Yes.
Okay.
Don't rely upon anything that you've done in the past, rely upon this.
Very well. Okay. Anything on 5?
For example,
Sir?
on page 6,
Mm-hmm.
E, Historic Preservation Commission,
Right.
I have that.
is there, that is yet another layer of government, another layer of review that is suggested in this code.
Right.
I'm not necessarily in favor of it because I have had to deal with historic preservation commissions in the past, and it creates additional 60 to 90 days in the review process. However, it is not unusual to have such a commission in cities, and we in Menifee have some historic structures and so forth. So the commission can either take that role when it's appropriate, or you can recommend to the council that such a commission be established, and that would be keeping this. So staff is asking specifically your position. Do you want this other layer of
Is-
government, or do you want to take on that responsibility?
as I read that, is this, I know I've heard of historical preservation commissions in cities that are, like in Chicago,
Mhm.
you know, city's been there for a long time. There's things that need to be preserved. We have a historical society here.
Mhm.
I do know that I seek guidance from them and questions when we have an issue sometimes, like for instance, when we had the hillside ordinance. I asked questions, went to them. So it was nice to have that resource to go to. We have that in place. So I'm looking for a little bit of guidance. We're a newer city. Yes, we have some of those things. We need to take those historical preservation into consideration. Do we need this right now? Is this something that can be addressed 5 years down the road, 10 years, 20 years? I don't know. So I was kind of looking for a little bit of guidance from you.
When the community gets to a point where it feels it's advantageous to it to establish either its own, it takes on the state's responsibility for historic preservation. It goes through a process and establishes, I forget what the term is, but it establishes itself as the historic preservation entity for the community. Then you would have to establish either individual sites, or you could establish districts that call for and allow for certain special features and special limitations and allowances to preserve and require the preservation of structures and so forth. You're not in that kind of a position now. However, again, not knowing your position on it, not knowing what the community's position on it, I left this in as an option that's available. There's an entire other chapter in here that deals with the commission as well. And if you don't like it here, we can just eliminate that entire chapter.
So I understand, the Historic Preservation Commission, would that be another approval body for a project? Or would it be like what the county did, like a DRC or something like that? Or how would that be administered?
This one is set up as a formal review body where identified structures and or structures in historic preservation areas would need to go in front of them, or structures that qualify based upon a series of criteria would need to go in front of that body for review and comment, and in some cases, as in the chapter here, some approval decision from that body before it's then submitted to you. And you could not change, depending on how it's set up, but it's set up here, that you could not change some of the decisions that they make.
I would like to get a legal opinion from the city attorney on this. I believe in our planning commissioner's handbook that I was given when I came in 2010, 2011, it states that a planning commissioner can't also be an elected official, cannot hold another office, can't be a member of another commission or some kind of committees, so that it's supposed to be standing alone. So I'm wondering if that is outdated and has to be changed before this could happen, or updated, or does that supersede any members of the planning commission from holding another post?
Well, as I understand it, these would not be planning commissioners serving
No.
at all. They would be a separate freestanding commission with other people than planning commissioners.
But it says here, members of the planning commission are appointed to serve as his city's historic preservation commission. So then that'd be two commissions.
No, yes, the language is such that if the chapter is written, is accepted and adopted, that talks about the historic preservation, you would act as the historic commission. In the same way, in some communities, the city council acts both as a council and as a planning commission. You, as a commissioner, can act as a planning commissioner and as the historic preservation commissioner. We would simply absorb the duties of that commission into the planning commission's duties.
Okay,
So-
I understand.
So we could either name it separately, or because at some point you may want to separate those two, or simply absorb those duties. But as Commissioner Sobek commented, right at this moment, there isn't a large need for that. In the future, there may be, but you can deal with it in the future. And you're going to periodically update the development code anyway, and that could be one of the issues.
And
Like-
at this
okay.
point, the planning commission actually takes on those responsibilities regardless, because CEQA requires historic review and all that kind of thing.
Right.
Correct,
So
but,
if you just eliminate this, you have the same power as if you put it into
correct, but
effect.
not to the extent that's in one of the proposed chapters.
Okay.
Because it's more pervasive in one of those chapters,
Okay.
because the intent is to actively seek out to preserve historic
Like-
items.
Like, for instance,
One's more aggressive, one is passive.
like, for instance, when they started building Menifee Lakes 25 years ago, the Lusk Company tore down the Callie Kirkpatrick house homestead, which would have been a great thing to have in our community. I'm aware of the Betty Boris's house, and there's a couple others, Ida Mae, and
Ziders.
yeah, Ziders, and then Chester Morrison's farm. Like, if those were to look at, say they were going to sell that property and developers were looking at it, would that be then something, if we didn't have this historical preservation, that would come to the commission? That's something we would discuss?
Correct, that would
Just
be
wanted to-
something, under your CEQA review and historic
Okay.
preservation, you would be obligated to look at that issue.
Okay.
I have a little bit of a different opinion about this. Rather than creating a commission, what does the planning commission think about tasking a committee? We, like Lisa said, we have the historical society that knows where the history is in this valley. I mean, I know a few things. I'm sure everybody here knows about a few things, but there are people out there that have written books, and there's a ton of knowledge compiled. Can we just create an overlay, a one-time committee, create an overlay of some kind for our general plan or for the development code that, on a project-by-project basis, is reflected against that overlay, and if it might fall within, a certain distance, or if it affects that property, or that house, or that historical artifact, be it farmstead or Indian, it just gets preserved, rather than on a case-by-case basis, adding another level of bureaucracy to the planning process.
Well, you would have to do a large amount of research in order to establish that list of what would be applicable. My suggestion is, if you don't want a separate entity or take on that separate entity as defined in one of the chapters, you simply eliminate this and set up a policy as a commission that you seek the advice of the Historic Society
Okay.
on projects. And then it'll be part of the normal staff review function to, for projects that we think qualify, that we get their input and return it to the
I would
commission.
agree with that,
I
because
would-
creating another layer of government costs at this point, I don't think is necessary.
No, I don't want to take away from what Menifee is. I mean, Menifee, was a mining town and a farming town and everything, but we don't want to add more loopholes to this. And that research has been done over and over and over again. So it's not like it would be hard to find the people. I mean, Betty Boris is one of the great historians of the valley. She knows where a lot of the bodies are buried here, so.
Well, since you have the society and they have done, I'm assuming it's they that have done that work,
Sure.
then simply having a standard practice of contacting them with applications to request their input would serve that same function. They would bring it to our attention, whatever the historic issue was, and to staff's attention, we would then bring it to the commission's attention. It's in its review of whatever the project is.
So rather than bringing a project to them on a case-by-case basis, we just take that information from them, draw a line in the sand, here's what it is. That way we know what we're up against, especially if an applicant's coming to town and looking to do something in town, we can overlay that just as you would if you're doing a preliminary application review. They might be able to foresee some of the obstacles in their due diligence process, rather than waiting until the last second where an artifact or something like that might. Lisa?
Right now, when a project comes in, our general plan does contain a cultural resource study, and it looked at and lists all of the historical and archaeological sites in the city of Menifee. So we have a list. Also, when projects come in and we know they're in an area that's sensitive, we either have the developer or we will send a request to the Eastern Information Center, and they maintain a list of, and they do a record search to determine if there's any historic sites or archaeological sites on the property as well. So we kind of have belts and suspenders. And currently, we do send public hearing notices to the Historical Society where we have projects that may have impacts to historical resources. So the junction, that project, it was sent to them so that they were aware. And we do coordinate with them already.
So when you send a notice to the Historical Society on a project like the junction, do they respond? Do you always get a response? I mean,
Not
if we were to
always.
go to that level, I would say we need to bring them in here and at least have a conversation with them and say, look, the city is actually going to be relying on you now, rather than you having your committee and doing what you do. We're going to be solely relying on you for some of this information, so.
But I don't know that we do have to solely rely on them, because for a lot of projects, they do the due diligence themselves and contact EIC themselves before they submit to make sure that they're not buying a historical property and that developing on the property won't be overly expensive, because they're going to have to, reconstruct a water tank or a historic building. They do a lot of that themselves, and we have the reports, the historical reports, cultural reports, reviewed by archaeological and historical consultants that are experts in the field, and they determine appropriate mitigation measures, whether or not, if something needs to be demolished, is it recorded, where is that video stored. It's very technical. The Historical Society is great for feedback on what methods they think would work well, or with the junction, we keep bringing that up, they have historical plaques, and they're required to work with the Historical Society on what information is going to be on the historical plaques, so that it actually has some context with the property itself. And the Historical Society is great for that, because they did contribute to the writing of the books on the history of Menifee, and can give some of that background information that the Eastern Information Center or the expert archaeologists and cultural resource consultants can't.
However, we do have the opportunity, you do have the opportunity to ask the council. You can either have this commission or absorb those duties, or ask the commission to direct staff to do what you just talked about. Gather that information, have it in place here at City Hall, sift through it so that we have an overlay or a map or some easy recognizable method to say, okay, this project is in an area that we have this level of concern for, that area for that level of concern. We can take that forth to the council, and that could be something the council could direct staff and authorize staff to gather that information and do that work.
I'd like to ask or comment on, as a planning commission, we deal with parks and we deal with trails in certain developments, yet there's a park and planning commission that is separate, that's another advisory. Here, where it states that the city's historic preservation commission it'd be like another commission again. Wouldn't it be better just to say that the duties of the city's historic preservation is part of the planning commission's?
That's what he
Do
was
it that way instead of having a separate commission, or?
Yeah, that's what.
I'm asking that, to add it to our duties.
You don't necessarily need to add it, you simply need, if that's the approach you want to take, you can strike E completely, strike the chapter that references the Historic Commission from the Development Code, and then you automatically, as the attorney commented, automatically assume those responsibilities. With that, you can ask the council to do the additional items that the chair has commented on, so that we've gone to the effort of gathering as much of the bits and pieces as we can and putting it down into a map or some other mechanism that any commissioners or any of the staff, any of the public, can come to City Hall, say, here's my property, is there any historic issue? And then for as much as we can reveal, we can let them know.
Well, I just thought about something else, and I venture to say Lisa's thinking the same thing. I don't know if we want to put it on a map, now that I say that,
Mhm.
because then all of a sudden, everybody's going to know where everything is, and everybody's
Well,
gonna
that's
go out
why I
and trash
say as
everything.
much as we can reveal. There are certain things that are not meant to be made available to the general public, and we would not put that on any map.
So maybe we just have
I like the idea
Overlay
too,
zones or
in
something.
seeking information from the Historical Society.
Right.
You know, I just keep thinking of the city of Redlands, because I drive up there sometimes the back way and go past the graveyard, and I drive past all of these beautiful pioneer homes that have been there since the original settlers settled in Redlands. And I can see them preserving that area of the city. It's a beautiful area. And we just don't have that here.
Well,
So I would
what
think-
you're talking about there, though, is establishing a historic district, and that would set up a series of criteria that everyone would have to adhere to. Those property owners would have to agree to be in that historic district and subject to the limitations of that.
You know, remodel them certain ways.
Right,
Yes.
right. And I know they have grants and all that. So I would like to propose we remove the Historical Preservation Commission from the record here.
I'd agree.
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah, I think we can do it as long as we can,
I think we're unanimous.
yeah, we can get the information from the Historical Society and compile it somehow that we can work from it.
Well, I have the book.
For a little history, there hasn't been any issue thus far, has there?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
So if
No,
we
just
remove
before our
that,
city, though.
what teeth do we have to prevent a developer or someone who buys land and wants to rip out some historical site?
You have all the same teeth with or without this commission.
Okay. And there's automatically is a historical review process in the permitting process?
In sequa.
Okay. Okay, then that's great.
Okay. All right, get through page 6. Are there other comments on page 6?
Yes, I had one about item C.
Okay.
It's planning manager, but it talks about the community development director. And I think that should be reworded to be more specific description of what the planning manager does. And I'll forward those comments to Charles. I just don't agree with the title. It says planning manager, and then it goes into what the community development director or designee does. It doesn't talk about what the planning manager does. And so I had a concern about that. And I think that if you're going to have an item dealing with planning manager, then let's talk about the planning manager and not the community development director.
Similar to how the city councils broke down with bullet points?
Right. So I just had a short statement just replacing what was here. And I'll just give that to Charles.
We want to make sure, though, that you recognize that there's a distinction between the department head and the planning manager. And the department head, the director, supervises the manager. Yes, there seems to be a tweak here in regards to what the manager is supposed to be doing, and yes, we will correct that. But we
Okay.
want to make it clear that in the hierarchy set up in this organization, the community development director supervises and oversees the manager.
Right. And I'll just read what I had written. The planning manager, under the guidance and direction of the community development director, shall oversee the work of the planning staff and shall exercise such other powers and duties as are prescribed by state law, local ordinance, and as directed by the city council via the established organizational protocols. Those are the concerns that I had.
I don't have a particular issue with any of that.
Okay, we can incorporate that, I believe.
That's fine.
Okay. Page 7.
I have one other question on page 6. The city council, I was thinking that maybe that could be expanded to include more of the duties.
That's in the decorum policy and everything else, right?
Right. And I was looking at, some of the other stuff that was in the rest of this. And I was saying, well, maybe the city councils, instead of just these 4 items, I had about 13.
Well, I think that the purpose for them only having a few is they want to leave it, not vague, but open enough to expand or contract the city council, as needed.
Well, and this is only as it applies to the development code, not
That's
not-
true.
not to
That's
the
true.
city,
Right, and
city
that's-
council's job as a whole.
Yeah,
This is only how it applies to development.
That's why I had all of those other things that were based primarily on the rest of those, so. It was just something that I had been thinking about as I was mulling through.
You added more things in relation to the to the development code, or are they different? from-
Relating to
Just
planning?
to the city council itself.
I-
Yeah, I just added more.
Well, number 4 pretty much adds anything that they decide to do. Exercise such
Yeah.
other powers and duties. So it doesn't really have to be mentioned.
Yeah, I don't think we have to get down to.
Yeah,
brass
so
tacks on it.
this should be sufficient.
Okay, because I was down in the weeds anyway.
Yeah.
because I was going through so much stuff.
And don't forget, one of the goals staff is trying hard with this is to cut down the number of pages. Give you an example. Right now, we anticipate 59 chapters. We've got somewhat of drafts of 54 of those chapters. Rough drafts, but drafts. So we are talking over 500 pages at this point in time. We're trying where we can. A few sentences here, a page or two there is what we're trying to chop it down to.
Okay. Concerns on page 7? Lisa, I see you got a sticky note there.
Yeah, but I realize.
You okay?
Yeah.
All right. Anything on 8? No? 9? I had a question on 9 regarding permit revocation and modification. I'm not sure how we fit this in, but when a permit is revoked, obviously they need to go back through the process to get a new permit.
Mhm.
In many cases, they don't. In many cases, the issue is
Swept under the rug.
abated or swept under the rug, or is there any subsequent enforcement on a revocation as opposed to, and let me go back even further. My philosophy in general is that code enforcement shouldn't be punitive. It should be on a complaint basis. But this is one area where I feel that going back and taking a second look
Proactive
is
on
worth it, is worth being proactive on. So in terms of revocation, when a permit is revoked, is there a period after a certain amount of time that we can say they either have to wait 6 months before they can file for a new permit? Or how do we make sure that revocation is being continuously enforced?
In most cases, your revocation procedure will be initiated by code enforcement action, so they are already involved in the process. You would have to go through the required steps to get to a planning commission public hearing to revoke the previous land approval. Once that previous land approval is revoked, it's up to code enforcement to then enforce the code, being if they needed a conditional use permit in order to operate in the first place, they got it, and then that was revoked, then they have to stop that activity until they go through the process again. I'm unaware of a procedure that would allow the commission to say, all right, we've revoked your conditional use permit. After your 10-day appeal period to go to the council, you've exhausted your administrative remedy. Therefore, you could the next day come in and submit an application for a conditional use permit for that same activity at that same location and start the process and go through the process. Technically, they should not be, and under the provisions of this code, they are not allowed to conduct land use activities without appropriate approval. So they would be in violation and could be cited each and every day as a separate misdemeanor for those land use activities that are being conducted without a conditional use permit
So.
or
it's
other
not-
approval.
My concern isn't so much for reapplication, it's more from an ongoing enforcement standpoint. In the case of one of the properties I brought up last commission meeting, that property had a revocation. And we know now that they're still doing the same thing, but does the development code require us to start from scratch as far as issuing citations and going through that process again? Or does this draw a line in the sand and say, look, you're at a revocation status of some sort where you still haven't fixed it, and then it just keeps getting worse until it's fixed?
You have two situations.
Does that
One-
make sense? Am I making any
Yes.
sense?
One, a use that has been approved, gone through the process and been approved, is either being conducted in a manner that is not consistent with the approval, and that inconsistency on its face is a violation of the code that can be cited, or if that activity is being conducted in a manner that's inconsistent with the approval, then you can go through the revocation process. Once the revocation is acted upon, once you have revoked it and they've gone through their opportunity to appeal and say they appeal and go to the council and it's been revoked by them as well, then from that point on, they're conducting a land use activity that requires an approval, and they no longer have it, so they are subject to, from that point on, being cited for violation of the code. And they can be cited as misdemeanor or whichever level it's at. It could be a ticket
Okay, so
for
right
each
there,
activity.
can it start at a different level, or does it have to start at the ground floor after you've already had a revocation? Because in my mind, a revocation is already a strike on your record, so to say. So why should the citation period begin at the ground level? It seems like it should begin at a higher level.
Until it's been revoked, they aren't technically violating the code.
But
If they can
once-
be cited for,
But once it has been revoked,
Yes.
all the options are available, including criminal prosecution.
so a lot more becomes available, but if they're doing something, even under an approved conditional use permit, that's a violation of code, they could be cited and it can go up the increasing levels of penalty for that. But until you've acted upon the conditional use permit aspect or the plot plan or whichever approval it is that they needed and had, until that is removed, you can't cite them for conducting the activity without that approval, because they did indeed have it. Even though they were acting in violation of it, they had it. For example, violation, they didn't put in conditions of, they didn't meet conditions of approval or something.
Right. Okay.
Well, what wording did you want to add here?
Well, I'm not really sure. I wanted to talk about it because of the bailiwick thing, frankly. That was,
What?
You want more teeth to have something done.
yeah, with,
What?
well, bailiwick park. The park in Quail Valley that has the above-ground sewer and
Oh,
kids running around in flip-flops and sewer and all kinds of good stuff, so. I don't know, what's the rest of the commission thing? I'm struggling with this a little bit because it seems to me like at a revocation point, you should be at some sort of an elevated status.
Well, I would think an elevated status, as the attorney pointed out, next would be what, basically
opens up
going to
for-
court. And then the judge could issue, what, an injunction or something?
Well, it could be.
Or
it-
more?
You can prosecute it civilly, in which case you might get an injunction, or you can put the owner in jail. I mean, there are steps that can be taken at that point. The revocation itself is a pretty significant thing, because you're taking away something that's been given. So if that's been done, then the road is clear to do whatever you need to do to make them behave, including, shutting it down. Actually, I think, well, it depends on what you want to do, and that's,
So I think, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but are you trying to say you want to put more teeth into it, kind of thing? Because it seems like what we have, some people don't pay attention to.
Well, the revocation clearly wasn't
Yeah.
enough. It wasn't enough.
Yeah, but
So, I mean,
Well,
we
then
really
it's a
can't
matter-
go beyond that, can we?
No. And it's a matter of taking the next steps legally beyond the revocation. The commission can't go out there and stop an activity. That's not your function. It's code enforcement, it's the attorney's office, it's staff's responsibility to follow through with the decisions the commission and council make.
Then the question is, on the case of using Bailey Brook as an example,
Sure.
why hasn't anything happened? Because his concern is, he lives near there or in his district, and it's growing again. So what could we do as a city to clean it up? That's not happening now.
That's a code enforcement discussion, advising the city council that the code enforcement division isn't dealing with this one particular issue in an expeditious, meaningful manner, and let the council direct management, and then management direct staff to deal with it on a more aggressive manner, or in a more aggressive manner.
Ms. Biggs, you seem to have some consternation over there.
Well, yeah, just a little, because it really isn't a function of either the commission or the council. This is an administrative task. And if there's unhappiness with code enforcement not acting more aggressively, that needs to be reported to management, and the city manager and the code enforcement people will have to take that into consideration. But it's their decision and their obligation to move forward. And certainly the city attorney's office will do whatever we're asked to do. And we're working on that particular one right now, as a matter of fact. But sometimes the difficulty is fiscal. Sometimes it's just that the facts aren't there or whatever. In a number of these cases, the facts have been well developed, and action will be taken.
Can I have one clarification, though? You said that the city attorney will do whatever we ask you to do, so will you work for free?
No, we will charge you as much as we possibly can
Okay,
on a
well.
word-by-word basis.
I couldn't miss that opportunity, I'm sorry.
All right, so I.
We'll try to do it
I think I got the
expeditiously,
answer to my question. This isn't the place to deal with it. Do we have concerns on page 10? Are there concerns? Okay. All right, so we're into Article 2 of the Development Code.
Page 12, I mean,
Oh,
just as a note, should be the, was it the hillside ordinance and is that in this section?
no, it's not, and my intention was not to
Oh,
have a continuous flow of revisions.
okay. So what's changed, because recently we got the containers, we've got the hillside, what else has changed that's out of
We'll have the noise ordinance,
noise?
and all of those will be renumbered and placed into the sequence of chapters as adopted by the council. And for example, you're going to be given, hopefully soon, the Economic Development Corridor chapter. We're hoping to have that roll forward and actually be adopted as an ordinance so that we can start using it in the areas of the community that are designated in those, and that'll be well before you get through all these chapters. So once it's been adopted, it just becomes this, and ultimately at one point in time, all the chapters will have been reviewed, all of them will have been decided upon by the commission and council, and at one point in time, they'll all be gathered together, and either an ordinance or an appropriate adjustment is made so that at one point, the entire code becomes effective.
Okay.
Well, the home occupation permit is that still being worked out? Or did the council pass something in the last few months relating to that?
Oh, yeah, the provisional business license.
Provisional business license, is that what got passed?
That was passed about a year ago.
About a year ago,
Yeah.
but the home occupation, wasn't that up?
We
Or is it
we
still on
are.
the agenda to be discussed?
It's on. It's one of the chapters that's being looked at. I'm not working on it separate from this development code, but I know that it has been an issue that has been raised a number of times. But since we were doing the entire development code anyway, we just put it in as one of the chapters.
Okay. Any concerns on page 13? 13? Okay. And where did all this verbiage come from, Mr. Clark?
Excuse me?
Where did all this verbiage come from? Just in general, I mean, you said it came from.
Oh, I used a template. I used the city of Rancho Cucamonga and Fontana and Temecula and another one. And probably 20% is just off the top of my head in knowing where language wouldn't work in our community and doesn't work in general, and or from experience knowing that this is a better way to do it than that is.
Okay.
So it's a collection of things. But I tried to pick the communities that I've heard here are examples of things that you've liked. Again, Temecula and Rancho Cucamonga.
In development standards, you have 9.38 overlay zoning districts being called out there.
What page you in?
I'm sorry, page 13.
Uh-huh.
The RCIP had overlay districts, overlay areas, the Scott Road policy overlay. There's another policy overlay kind of near Holland Road and Stern. There's a kind of a rural-esque type neighborhood there where certain things were allowed outside of the development code. And, you know, I would seek to find out, you know, what those things were that were allowed in the old development code, because obviously a lot of people move here for some of those reasons.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, finding a balance between what makes sense for our city going forward and what makes sense for them is something we need to look at. So can we maybe table this section and pull the overlays? Does that make any sense?
You have an overlay chapter.
Okay.
And in that overlay chapter, we will include those kind of information so that we'll either carry forth the same name or come up with a clever name to identify the areas that it applies to and where the overlay has different standards than the other code.
Well,
For
what-
example, the hillside overlay
Yeah.
has a specific set of standards that are applicable.
Isn't that the only overlay? Because when we adopted the general plan, we wiped out all the existing
Right.
RCP overlays. So the only overlay right now is the hillside, right?
Correct, but the overlays that were referred to can still be considered in the development code if they're pertinent to applying land development standards.
If there is no overlay, how can we apply it? In other words, the only overlay is a hillside. There is no other overlay.
Because the overlay is and can be a provision of an area of the community that has unique circumstances that are applicable to it relative to the development standards, which is what the development code is, development standards, that should be applied to that area.
I guess I'm slow on this, but if the none have been designated,
To clarify, we don't have, just because we don't have overlays in our general plan, doesn't mean we can't have them in our zoning code.
oh, okay. So under the since we have not amended our zoning code, are there overlays currently in the zoning code?
No, except for our hillside or
Right.
overlay.
So that was one thing that we discussed. I mean, back when Billy was still here, I mean, that was one thing, the Scott Road policy overlay, he was big on that as well, was the uses in that area were allowed certain things, you know, there were certain home occupations and businesses and things like that the county recognized that were as being allowed. So when we created the general plan to save energy in the general plan, we omitted that. So we were going to circle back and do
Oh, you're
it.
talking about, let's go back and
And we were
apply
gonna
some of
we
them.
were gonna circle back and do
Okay.
it here.
Okay, I see.
Wouldn't there still be kind of an overlay? I'm just thinking off the top of my head, over, by Romo Land, I think we had a project, and I think it was something to do with the March Air Reserve Base or the airport, that has something it kind of creeped into part of Menifee. Isn't that kind of an overlay?
They're airport influence areas. We're in the March Air Reserve Airport Influence Area and the Paris Valley Airport Influence Area. Yes, it's kind of an overlay where there are some development standards. Certain uses are discouraged, but For Menifee, we're on the outer edges of the airport influence areas, so there's not too much impact to the land uses allowed.
But you are correct. It is in essence an overlay, and you bring it to our attention, and we should include it in the overlay chapter.
I would agree with what you just said as far as coming back and looking at it, because
We-
I'm very interested in adding a home business overlay, rural, things like that.
Exactly.
Yeah, so,
Right, we'll do that. That's the point of the workshop, is to find out this kind of information and what you'd like in order to begin to put it together.
Perfect, okay. All right. So we'll skip 9.12, go up to, oh, we don't have a 9.13, do we? Is that on purpose? No 9.13?
was that a section that was jerked out?
I mean, 9.12
Oh,
dash.
all of them,
There is none.
right.
Okay.
With the exception of one chapter at this point, they're all even-numbered chapters.
Okay.
2, 4, 6, 8,
Oh, really?
yes.
Okay.
That way you have an endless opportunity to interject where you need additional chapters.
Okay.
Yeah, smart guy.
Excuse me, I was wondering if someone could go close the blinds out there. It's kind of coming in and blinding Commissioner Sobek.
Whoa,
Oh,
can't see.
thank you, sir, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, 9.14, general application processing procedures. There is a highlighted section here that Charles is asking our permission on or opinion on regarding periodic review of application forms being done at the planning commission level. Do we want to do that, or do we want to charge staff with that?
I prefer to leave that with staff.
And why, what are the pros and cons? Why would the commission want to do that? Just
One of the
trying to
principal
lay out some
reasons
framework here.
for the commission to review an application form is so that when someone makes the application, completes that application, sufficient information is provided that it satisfies the curiosity, the local curiosity of the commission. You may not care that there's this, that, or something else on a property, so you don't include it on the application form. But you certainly want to know whether there's a historic structure on the property, or you certainly want to know if there's a blue line stream or something of that sort. It gives you the opportunity to help staff understand what's necessary in the application as presented to the commission so that you can make a decision. There may be a lot of things. I mean, in your staff reports now, we repeat things 2 or 3 times in that report. You really don't need to do that. If it's in there once, it's in there. But the form, we're dealing with a lot of issues, so I wasn't going to deal with that until bigger things had been dealt with. But having the commission, at least periodically, once a year, once every couple of years, look at that form. You can say, well, we never really consider what the adjoining driveways are, so why include that? You just you answer the question as to what information is really needed for you to make a decision on a property.
Well, and periodically, that could be up to interpretation.
Mm-hmm. And whenever you want to look at the application, you direct staff to bring the application to you.
Do we want to, okay, so we don't need to specify what periodically is?
Nope.
Okay.
Matter of fact, it's better that you don't, because then you, at your whim, can ask that it be brought back, as opposed to periodic, as opposed to once, annually at the first meeting in July or something, where then if a problem arises in August, somebody from the public says, well, you can't look at your application now because it says July. But if you leave it as periodically, you get to ask staff and we bring it to you.
Okay, so do we leave it at a commission level, or do we charge staff with this? It's the
I'd say
commission's-
once a year or periodically, meaning once a year, that's a good idea.
For staff to do it, or for the commission
The
to do it?
commission,
Okay.
we can,
We have so many forms, though.
well,
There's
we
gonna be
can,
an impact on time.
we can just say that, that staff, forms that staff deems relevant to the planning commission, which means I'm not gonna I'm not gonna look at a dog license application, but I'm gonna look at a building permit application, maybe.
No, you're not.
Not a building
No?
permit.
No, you're not. You're going to look at the land use applications.
Oh,
So
okay.
conditional
And
use
that's all.
permit, plot plan.
Oh, okay. So
Correct.
there's not that
That's
many of
all.
those.
And we can give you them all, and same as you're doing with the development code, you look through each and every one. If you've got a question on, because a lot of them are going to be very, very similar to each other, you're going to look at it and say, oh, I've got a question on page 3, or I want to make a change on page 3, and you discuss that one issue. And you, like this, you go through page by page, issue by issue, resolve it amongst yourselves, and give direction to staff.
I'm for that.
I prefer to leave it with staff, let them handle that. That's my opinion on that.
You could go either way, Lisa, Mark.
I think it doesn't hurt to just bring it out in the public and let us discuss it, and then if, because the public can have some input or whatever, maybe someone's had a problem with it or something, because it would be under a public hearing, correct? Or are you
Well,
just saying it'd be like a workshop type thing?
It wouldn't be under public hearing, it would be under discussion.
Oh, okay.
So you can still receive public input as you
Yeah.
deem appropriate.
And then if you have questions of us, we have questions for you, how things have worked or maybe could be improved.
Right.
Yeah.
That helps
And
with
I've been in
transparency, too.
communities where members of the public, from their experience, have raised issues that led to changes in the application forms.
Yeah, that's good, okay.
You know,
Okay, yeah, let's do that.
well, and on the application, I wanted to ask, in fee, I wanted to ask, where would we discuss, and did I miss it, where we had an example of, we had a church that wanted to do a carnival last year, a nonprofit agency. Where do we discuss possibly having lower fees or a minimal amount of fees for?
The commission does not discuss fees.
We don't.
It's a council issue. You can offer up, as a group, a suggestion to the council that it look at the fees in this manner, i.e. for nonprofit organizations, that it be 50% of a profit organization, or however you choose to phrase it. But it's not the role of the commission to establish fees.
Okay. I just, like as we have high schools and they have events.
Well, she's correct in that you're right, it's not our role, but it does come before us, it does affect us. We have, as planning commissioners, we've had to deal with this in the past, so we can make,
None of your decisions should ever be based upon the fee that's applied to it.
Not
That
the
would
decision,
skew the process, and
but in the code, so it won't come like that, the fees won't come before us in the code.
correct, will not.
Okay.
But again, I'm not trying to discourage you from asking and advising the council on that issue, but as separate from any particular application. But as far as applications themselves are concerned, you should never have the fee as one of your
Right.
deciding
Right.
factors.
It just, with that word there, that question came to mind, so I wanted to make sure I asked that question tonight.
And I bring to your attention that you're almost at the normal
Okay.
starting time for the commission.
I want to try and get through this last page. Are there any other questions on this page?
yeah, I do, and I'll leave it open question, we'll finish it later. Several, and staff does a great job, but several constituents, people in the city have come that have filed building permits either to build a house, an addition, tenant improvements, whatever it is. And they've said that they file it, they give their plans, they get a set of conditions, they do it, and then they're told, okay, you gotta do these 5 more. Okay, now they get done, you gotta do 5 more. And it is it's probably one of the most irritating things for them. So I'm wondering what kind of wording we can put in here that requires that all conditions or whatever are clearly stated up front. Because I've heard that from several people.
Well, so back up. You're talking about like a building permit where conditions are applied after a planning application's already been processed.
Yeah, I suppose that's a building issue, not a planning issue.
So in the case of this, I did have a concern about this, and in my experience processing applications in other cities, my problem with this is that for me to submit an application, submit a check, submit everything I can through this checklist process, only to hear within 30 days that my application is incomplete, when I'm expecting to hear some plan check comments, is very frustrating. It would seem to me that for the applicants coming to the city, that an application would not be accepted unless it was complete. So counter staff sits there and goes through the application with them line by line. This, you have a checklist process. This item is here, check. This item is here, check. And not get through this, oh, well, 30 days later, your application is incomplete. Oh, and by the way, we took some of your money too.
Well, again, we have two different things going on here. One is the planning application process, in which, yes, you do have a checklist. Yes, you can stand there at the counter and say that you need this acoustical study. Well, it's on there, so check it off, and so on and so forth. But until we read that acoustical study, we don't know whether or not it's adequate to meet the needs.
Well, okay, so having an acoustic study means it's complete. Having incompetence inside your acoustic study, that's a plan check comment. That's how I would differentiate the two of those. It's either there or it's not. At this point, it's you either have it or you don't.
There are a variety of things that are needed in an application, and it's terribly time-consuming. You need to have a certain level of expertise and time to go through any application in order to determine whether what's there is sufficiently complete. Because once your project is deemed complete, there are other timeframes that come involved, and there are other mandates that apply to that. And if you deem a project complete erroneously, then you've set the city up for potential problems that it doesn't really need to be involved in.
Well, we're not talking about a project, we're just talking about the initial application. So making sure that you have your title report, your radius package, you have all the things you need for your application, you are complete. Ms. Biggs?
Now, the difficulty I think that Charles is talking about is basically the Permit Streamlining Act. When you say, I've got everything the city has everything it needs to process this, the clock starts to run, and you either have to approve it or deny it within a specific period of time. And that puts a significant burden on staff if the first thing they find out is everything inside it is incompetent. So, and I guess what that means is that for the developer as well, whoever the developer is, whether it's an addition, a personal person, whatever, once it's deemed complete and the clock starts, if the city can't see itself getting to a yes within that time period, then it gets processed with a recommendation of denial.
So how do you?
It's working with the applicant to make sure that everything that the city really needs to evaluate the project is in before the application is deemed complete.
So how do you read part of a study like that that's required as part of an application without plan checking it at the same time? You're reading through it and making sure everything's there, but how do you not check it at the same time? It just...
Well, you're checking for a variety of things, but again, you're not going to verify the plan itself until you find out that you've got all the pieces there that you need. So, and as I said, it works to the advantage of the person submitting, because otherwise what happens if it turns out later, gee, this isn't enough, we need more, and they have to get it in and there's time constraints, it gets processed, it gets denied, and it gets started over. So, it's a cooperative kind of thing.
I mean, as far as the Permit Streamlining Act, that applies to the city and returning responses back to the applicant in a timely manner. It's not,
sure.
It's not back on the applicant. The
It
applicant
is
can drag their feet for
if
6
the
months.
applicant has submitted an application that is not fully processable, and that doesn't get discovered until after it's deemed complete, and we deem it complete, we take the steps, and we get to this particular report, whatever it may be, and it's inadequate, we then have to notify them, we need this redone, the clock is running during that time. So the applicant is going to have time constraints. And if he can't make the application complete enough to be processed, then the only decision that the city can do is to recommend it for denial. So So the goal, and correct me if I'm wrong, Charles, but the goal is to cooperate between the city and the applicant so that once everything is actually in place, then the clock starts to run.
Correct.
As opposed to before.
And if a project is denied, for example, the acoustical study determines that you need either the acoustical study is inadequate, so we can't make a determination, or the acoustical study shows that there needs to be a 10-foot wall, and the applicant refuses or doesn't, either doesn't submit a corrected report or doesn't submit revised plans to show the 10-foot wall, and the application is then deemed, the recommendation is for denial, and you deny it. In the code that's proposed, and in the vast majority of codes, you'll have a time frame under which the applicant will not be allowed to resubmit for that same activity at that same location. And so, one, you will have cost them the reapplication fee, the cost of, since we are deposit based for review, all the time that was spent in reviewing it, and then the time frame of going through the whole process once again. In a perfect world, yes, it would be very nice to be able to sit down with a clear checklist, adequate time, and a staff with adequate experience to go through everything that's required in an application. And for a lot of the small applications, you can basically do that. And the turnaround time is relatively small. But if you're spending as staff an inordinate amount of time at the public counter, slowly going through with the applicant there, then it takes away from doing the other activities that have to be done in order to get applications analyzed and submitted to the commission. It's not unusual at all for staff to do a cursory review of an application to determine its completeness, and then immediately contact the applicant and saying, we're missing this, we're missing that, or this is unclear, what's the situation, let's have a meeting. We do lots of meetings here in order to resolve the issue. Staff is not out looking for a way to extend how much time it takes to get a project through, because that's not beneficial to the community, therefore it's not beneficial to staff. We would like to, and hopefully through this process, to make it as clean and simple as possible for an individual that wants to do something in the community to come look at our development code, look at our applications, find out this is where they want to locate this activity. Under the code, it's subject to this process. This is the application that I need. Clearly, I need X, Y, Z, all these different things. I can submit it, and in a timely fashion, because it's all laid out, get it analyzed by staff in front of the staff, commissioner, or council in order for a decision to be made. Right now, a lot of the problem that we have is the county's bureaucratic process of doing things, and the overlaps and the holes and the other issues that hopefully with this new development code will resolve. But it is advantageous to staff and therefore the city to make things as clear and simple and straightforward as possible.
Okay. All right, we'll have to pick up next time. We're already running over limit. So does the commission want to take 5 before we go to planning commission?
Yes, please.
All right. Excuse us, we run a little bit late. We'll be right back in about 5 minutes. The delay we carried over in the workshop. Madam Clerk, would you please take roll?
Yes, sir. Commissioner Phillips. Commissioner Sobek.
Here.
Commissioner Thomas.
Here.
Vice Chair Metelko.
Here.
Chair Leesmeyer.
Here. And we all please rise to the flag salute. Put your right hand over your heart. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Ms. Biggs, you have a comment? Or Mr. Clerk?
Yes, I'd like to point out that we just had our workshop, and there appears to be a minor bit of confusion. We had provided to you quite a while ago a certain number of chapters of the new development code. We, as a courtesy, provided you a second set of that a couple of weeks ago. Staff had added a couple of chapters at the end that had not been finalized for that draft. So it should not have been included to you, but what you have is simply the exact same material as you had before, plus a couple of erroneous pages at the end. You will be given corrected pages by the time you get to that point. So just go through the material that you either had before or this, knowing that you're going to get at least the last few pages, like starting on 72 or something, corrected.
All right,
Thank you.
thanks. All right, are there any agenda modifications tonight?
No, sir.
All right, no presentations.
No, sir.
Do we have any speaker slips for public comments on items not on the agenda?
Yes. Katie Manier?
Good evening.
Hello.
Mr. Leesmeyer, your campaign signs are placed on public right-of-ways in a lot of areas. I don't know if you're aware of that. Code enforcement has come along and taken down signs for estate sales because they're not in the right places. They've confiscated them, won't give them back to the people. And yet you have signs that are on stop signs, they're on light standards. I believe some of them are in the easement on a sidewalk, just like these estate sale signs were that were taken down. That's a violation of the FPPC. Then I want to know why most of you and several council members keep going to Sacramento for ethics training when it's not practiced, and we all know that. And it can be done right here in this office online. And I do know several people that do, a couple people that do that, but the rest of you don't. You all spend taxpayers' money, go have a nice trip, go to Sacramento, live high on the hog, whatever, and the others are taking it right here in their office. We also have a waste with the Vegas conference to bring new businesses to this city. Nobody knows, nobody can account for what businesses are brought to this city by going up there and having this free for all. People take their wives, they have expensive dinners. It's all at taxpayers' money. There are commercial realtors that do this, and businesses have their own people that are out looking and scouting for sites to put their businesses. Why we're spending taxpayers' money for everybody to go and have another vacation and another vacation is beyond me. I think the waste needs to stop. Mark, it was a good comment too about more things being made to the public. We need to be aware, and we're not. Lots of things are done behind closed doors and backdoor deals that people don't know about. We need to see that that is stopped.
Thank you, Katie. Other comments?
Toby Cole?
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Toby Cole. I'm with a local business here in Menifee. We're doing our due diligence right now to expand our business, and I came to the planning department and found out that we are, in the new general plan, we're going to be included in the economic development corridor. I want to find out how I go about getting additional information on what zoning is going to be included in the EDC, and how I can go about voicing my opinion on the plans we have to be included in the EDC in the local area we are in.
Are you experiencing difficulty reaching staff with your questions? I'm not sure.
No, it's just that staff recommended that I come here and ask about what zoning is going to be included, because I think right now we're MSC, if I'm not mistaken. I think it's going to be more stringent, more limited than MSC. And of course, our business owner has concerns that if, he purchased this property and is moving forward, and if the limitations on zoning are going to impact the property moving forward, we would like to be able to at least voice our concerns and possibly include those new zones in the EDC.
We are, the EDC is a new thing to all of us, and we are actually in the process of going through the definition of all of that. And Mr. Leclerc, you have something else you want to add on that?
Right, I just wanted to yes, we have had the conversation. We are bringing forth the EDC zone to the commission. It'll be at a workshop in either the next meeting or the following meeting. That will be your opportunity to review which zone, which sub-area you'll be in, and what at least the beginning, the proposed language would be and the proposed restrictions would be. it would be at that workshop and then at a subsequent public hearing, both before the Planning Commission and City Council, to voice your opinion about whether or not you would want certain things in that proposed chapter changed. So look at the commission agendas on the website for the workshops and the public hearings. Come to those workshops and public hearings and participate in the discussion, and you'll be able to have your opportunity to voice whatever changes you would suggest.
Okay, and that particular workshop to discuss the EDC has not been scheduled yet?
No.
Okay, all right, thank you very much.
No further speakers on this item.
All right. Item 7.1, the agenda minutes, I'm sorry, the approval of the meeting minutes from August 12th, 2014. If there are no modifications,
Make a motion to approve.
do we have a motion and a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Nothing on our consent calendar tonight, which brings us to item 9.1, the plot plan 2013-244, America's Tire. Mr. Fowler.
Before we begin, I'd like to ask the city attorney for her legal opinion on this matter. I did ask her earlier, but for the record, I want to see if there was a conflict of interest, since my employer does do business with American Tire nationwide, so I'm publicly asking and going to let her give her answer.
Yes, you informed me that you are an employee of a business that does some business with American Tire, that there's no increase or decrease to your income related to any of that business, and that you're not an owner of the business, you're just an employee. And under those circumstances, I don't see a conflict of interest.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Commendable. Mr. Fowler, you have a staff report?
Yes, Ryan Fowler, Associate Planner, here to present America's Tire's plot plan. It's plot plan number 2013-244. And just before I get started on the presentation, I wanted to bring your attention to a memo that I passed out to the commission. You'll see in that memo, I reference a couple different correspondence that we had recently, just in the past week, with the Pechanga tribe. It was back on Monday of the 25th that the Pechanga tribe called us up and wanted to make some revisions to a couple of the conditions of approval. I list that in the memo here, the specifics of those revisions. On Monday, those revisions were essentially editorial. They just clarified the conditions a little bit further, and they were intended to avoid any misinterpretation further down the line. So yesterday afternoon, after close of business, we received a formal letter from them, an additional correspondence, and essentially in that correspondence, they wanted us to make some changes that would have required that if during grading any cultural resources are found out there on the property, that those resources would go to a facility, a curating facility that meets a very specific federal standard. And it so happens that the Pechanga tribe's facility meets that particular standard. Now, in the past, on other cases, we've been told by Saboba that they prefer that it go to the Western Science Center, which is the museum in Hemet. Staff, because we received this comment after the close of business yesterday, hasn't been able to determine whether that Western Science Center meets that particular federal standard, or if any other facilities in the region might, meet that standard as well. So at this point, if the commission deems that we should move forward with this proposal, there's three options that I mentioned in the memo. One is we can just make the one particular change from their Monday correspondence to us. That was more editorial, wasn't substantive. We could make all of their changes that are listed not only in the memo but on their comment letter as well, including requiring that any resources go to a facility meeting that particular federal standard. Or three, we can continue the hearing to a date certain to allow staff additional time to look into additional facilities that might meet that standard.
Mr. Fowler, do you have those recommendations? Maybe I missed.
The
I
Pechanga.
see. Okay, I was missing that page.
Okay.
Thank you.
How convenient at the last second again.
Consistent with them.
Yeah, right. Ms. Biggs, what do you recommend here? I mean, try not to.
Well, this is, of course, always a recurring kind of issue. And it's unfortunate that the comments were so late in arriving is the problem. On the other hand, it seems to me that probably the best solution would be to continue the matter,
Be to what?
to continue the matter. Seeing as this just came up and it is something that needs to be addressed.
Do we have people that have flown in or driven in from out of town?
I don't know. Actually, you could certainly open it and go ahead now and just continue any decision-making.
Okay. We should, I'm sure they brought a team and they probably want to do a presentation and whatnot, so we can probably go through that and
Yeah.
see where we end up, but, okay, all right.
Well, my question would be, didn't we have a similar situation on something else where
Audie Murphy?
we heard the hearing and then we basically left that issue to city council to decide? So I would assume if we would hear this tonight, if it was approved, it would basically save 2 weeks, as I would imagine in 2 weeks then.
This item won't go to city council, whereas
This-
that was a
No.
Audie Murphy project.
No,
Okay.
yeah, this is just a plot plan, so you would be making the final decision. So,
So you're basically saying that staff and council has not had time to review the requirements of Pachanga or Sebulba, and you don't feel comfortable giving?
that's correct. As a matter of fact, I didn't see this until late this afternoon.
Could we,
So,
could we hear their presentation, do the public hearing, and either deny or approve whatever the the commission's gonna vote, with the contingency that you review, and if you don't find any problems with this, it's approved?
I don't think that that would be appropriate, quite
No, we
frankly.
can't leave it open-ended.
You can certainly you can do all of that, but then I would suggest that you continue the public hearing open to a date certain, and then we can come back and let you know where we are.
I'd like to propose that we go ahead with the public hearing.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, Mr. Fowler, go ahead with your presentation.
So the project site is located on Hahn Road as you drove up. It's on the north or back side of the Circle K. The zoning for the property is the Newport Hub Specific Plan 248. It's in planning area number 1, which is slated for retail commercial. And it's on all sides, it's surrounded by the same zoning, the retail commercial. The general plan land use is the same as Specific Plan 248. All the way around it, on all sides, is property with the same general plan land use designation. And then the existing land uses to the north, it's vacant. To the west, it's also vacant. And then to the southwest is developing our Newport Town Square. It's almost open. To the south, like I said, is Circle K, and it's not shown on this aerial, but to the east is the new Menifee Medical Building. So planning application 2013-244 is for the proposed construction and operation of a new 7,454 square foot building for a tire sales and service shop, America's Tire, on a .93 acre parcel. The access is going to be, the primary access is going to be off of Hahn Road. And here you'll see in front of you the most current site plan, what is in your package, your staff report package. So it's taking its primary access off of Hahn Road, and that is a full turning movement entryway. And then it's got the 2 entry points into the parcel where the subject property is. On the southwest portion or lower left portion is the secondary access, which cuts through in between Newport Town Square and Circle K. So on the bottom of the frame here is the east elevation. That'll be the elevation that faces Hahn Road. This includes on the left-hand side the retail area where the tire sales will be located. And then on the west side, obviously that will be the opposite side facing away from Hahn Road. On the bottom is the north elevation. That'll be the side facing City Hall here. And on the south side, that will be the side facing Newport Road. And further on in this presentation, we'll see how the applicant has chosen to screen the service bays. Here's an image of the landscaping plan, the conceptual landscaping plan that the applicant has proposed. And we'll go into a little bit in a couple slides, further detail on the changes that have occurred and how the applicant has attempted to screen the service bays. At the workshop a few months back, there was two major themes or items, topics of discussion that were brought up at the workshop. The first being the actual use for tire sales and service. So what we can say is in the Newport Hub specific plan zoning code for this particular planning area, they allow for tire sales and service with a plot plan. So the zoning ordinance for this planning area, it refers back to the county's CPS zone, which is one of their commercial zones. In that zone, it allows for tire sales and service with a conditional use permit. However, on this specific plan, in this area, they moved the tire sales and service use from the CUP category to the plot plan category. Which that makes less of a difference here in the city in terms of the processing, but at the county it would have meant going from a planning commission hearing to simply a director's hearing. So the second item that was brought up at the workshop was views of the service bay. So what the applicant has chosen to do to screen the service bay was they increased the size of all of the plantings, all of the trees around the perimeter of the site from 15 gallon to 24-inch box. They added the two additional trees. You can see on the far left side of this slide, there's a planter island. They added the two additional trees there. They added one additional tree on the southeast corner, and then 3 additional trees on the northeast corner. And you can see from the site map here with the building footprint in there, the service bays will be on the left, so they've attempted to screen it with additional plantings. So this time staff is recommending that you adopt a mitigated negative declaration based on the findings incorporated in the initial study and the conclusion that the project will not have a significant effect on the environment. And you adopt resolution number PC 14181 approving plot plan 2013-244 subject to the attached conditions of approval. And this concludes staff's presentation.
Thank you, Ryan. Are there any questions of the staff report itself? Okay, hearing none, we'll open the public hearing at 7:34. Madam Clerk, this is legally published?
Yes, sir, it was.
And have we received any additional correspondence regarding the item?
No, sir.
All right, thank you.
I do have one. Can I ask a quick question of staff? Or does that have to
I don't see why not.
There was a comment in the report that deliveries are going to be done with a semi truck. I'm just wondering, is there sufficient space in this driveway for it to come in one of the two driveways on the property and then come out, or are they going to be parked in this the right of way coming in?
It's not legal for them to park in the roadway. They would, that driveway. I take it back then. They could park in that, but no, there's sufficient turning radius in the driveway configurations to allow the vehicle to enter the site, be on the site itself, and exit the site.
Okay. And the applicant is present, I assume? Do you have a presentation or anything you'd like to speak about? Yes, sir. Please.
Good evening, Chairman Leesmeyer and members of the Planning Commission. My name is Chris Peterson. My address is 13801 Danielson Street in Poway, California. I'm an Assistant Vice President in the Construction Department with America's Tire. I'm here to provide you with some additional information about our company and to ask for your vote tonight. I'd be happy to also answer any questions that you may have. We are excited to bring a new America's Tire to the city of Menifee. We will have revenues of about $3 million. We'll be providing upwards of 10 to 20 full and part-time jobs. And we look forward to the opportunity. We are not a traditional automotive repair facility. We work only on tires and wheels. We do not do any mechanical work, such as brakes or engine work or transmission work. We don't mess with any fluids, antifreeze, oil, and things like that. So we have a very clean operation. Our stores pride themselves on a clean and efficient workflow with a strong emphasis on customer service and safety. Our passion for customer service, the limited products that we sell, and our immaculate facilities differentiate us in the automotive industry. We pride ourselves on maintaining a clean, modern, and upscale fashion of facility. We have extensive training programs for our employees where we provide them with the knowledge and the tools to develop a good business background, pride in themselves, knowledge about our products, and integrity to best interact with our customers. It's not typical to hear that a tire store is clean and a nice place to go, but our customers love us for those very reasons. We also create a great opportunity for employment wherever we go and good sales tax revenue. Enthusiasm and positive attitudes are the hallmark of our employees' interaction with our customers. That and the fact that we strive hard to have the lowest price on tires and the best customer service have made us the largest and most successful tire company in America. We have a very large philanthropic program within our company where we do a lot to give back to the communities where we do business. In addition to seeking out worthwhile organizations to assist, we also have extensive scholarship programs for our employees and for the children of our employees to encourage their higher education. We are a family-oriented company. We provide medical, dental, retirement benefits, paid vacations, and a network of support for all of our employees. One interesting fact is that in the 54 years that we've been in business and almost 900 stores, we have never, ever laid anybody off. Of course, some people have come and gone along the way, but we've never had to lay anybody off for lack of business or for any other reason. Again, we are excited to come to the city of Menifee, and we look forward to your support, and I'm available to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you. Are there any questions of the applicant?
Well, I don't know so much a question, but I just want to, I know you went over and above to give us materials this time, and you enhanced some of the things that we asked for. And I just want to thank you for all the materials. I do, when we get to a point, I have some aesthetic things that I'd like to discuss.
Okay. Earl, do you have questions?
No.
Okay. All right. Thank you, sir. Appreciate
Thank
your
you.
time. Appreciate you being here. Any speaker slips for public testimony?
Yes, sir. Grant Yoders.
Good evening, Grant Yoders, community of Sun City. I was present at the workshop that came before the commission earlier this year, and at that time I was really in favor of this project. Of course, after the normal issues presented by Mr. Thomas and the standardized checked-off list of concerns by Ms. Sobek, the developer has tweaked the plan, and I feel more strongly that the project should be approved. The area of the project is commercial, and any questions that residents should have about the business being in this area, I think, are really moot. The nearest tire dealership is on Bradley and the other one on Ethanac Road, so the location is perfect considering that it's just across the street from our newest shopping area and also the new town center, and then the 3 new eateries that will be just in very close proximity will be a good place to go to relax while your tires are being put on your car. I've been buying tires from America Tire for the last 40 years, so I'm familiar with their establishment, and they are a very clean and efficient operation. So at this time, I would strongly recommend that you folks approve this project. Thank you.
No further speakers, sir.
Okay. All right, we'll close the public hearing at 7:40.
Do you want to keep it open and continue it?
Well,
Because the tribal.
we'll have to reopen after discussion, I believe. We want
We-
to discuss this among the commission.
You can leave it open while you're discussing.
Okay, very well. All right, so does the commission have discussion? Ms. Sobek, you brought up architecture or aesthetics. What's your concern?
Yeah, it's not so much their facility. I actually believe that this will be a great asset to the city of Menifee. I've talked, since our last workshop, I've talked to a lot of residents who have shared with me how far they have to drive to go to the nearest American Tire, and we're losing tax dollars in our city
Right.
because of that. I thought about, as I drive into the hub area, right past the burger place on the corner and the Circle K, as we come into this specific plan area, I think it's a great opportunity as we are developing to make this circle a really beautiful circle in this specific plan, where maybe the trees that line in front of those stores as you come around and as this developed, we can make this look really aesthetically pleasing, a really beautiful hub. And so as I was looking over some of the plant schedule, some of the issues that I've been concerned with, that I see happening around with some of the erosion, with some of the plants, with us having to apply these standards of the drought type plants, it seems that the ground cover's planted, and then within a year, the ground cover's gone, the hoses are exposed, and there's no replacement of that. And so I didn't know if that was something that we could start looking at, maybe adding. I know mulch should be about 5 inches. It should be reapplied every 2 years. And as we drive through some of these specific areas like this, it has an opportunity for a real beautification opportunity, that we can have some of these standards applied, and I'm not sure if this is where we discuss it or how to address that when it's on the property. And some of these plants, like the one plant that doesn't do well here that we see a lot of is the trailing rosemary that looks just horrible. The lower rosemary is great, but the trailing rosemary just seems to be one of those plants that just kind of dies on the vine and looks really bad in areas.
Okay.
So those were some of my aesthetic concerns.
Thank you, Ms. Sobek. Mr. Leclerc, do you have comments?
If the
Great points.
If the individual commissioners have recommendations as far as modifying, and you don't even need to give us a plant, but if you say you believe one of the plants in that proposal will not adequately address the landscaping that you feel is appropriate, you can ask that an alternative be provided. And since we may be continuing this, they'll have a chance to do that. But secondly, and the bigger point, you are reviewing a project under a submitted site plan that includes landscaping. If you approve it, that approval is based upon the information in the public record, that site plan. If in a year from now, 2 years from now, 3 years from now, that project is not consistent with that site plan, that is a basis upon which to revoke the CUP for nonconformance to the approval. So I'm not sure why things haven't been dealt with appropriately in the past, but at the moment, the current staff and hopefully the future staff, if they are not following what was approved, then we have a mechanism to force them to bring it up to what was the approval. The approval is based upon the public record. The public record, part of that is the illustration that's presented to you to influence you to make that decision. If you feel the condition isn't worded adequately to to also accomplish that. We can certainly change the language in the condition that makes it clearer that at all times in the future, the landscaping has to be maintained in an appropriate, healthy, weed-free manner at all times, or they're subject to revocation under whatever the appropriate chapter would be. So you have two approaches to it.
Okay. Okay, so, so we can leave that open and we can address some of those plant questions with staff.
If the commission as a whole believes, or a majority of the commission believes that additional or alternative plant material is appropriate, then we can ask the applicant to provide additional or alternative plant material.
Okay, and then as we come into the hub area, and now we have this beautiful American Tire on one side, and we have the medical building on the other, and it starts this, with the trees planted. I noticed there's some crepe myrtles on both sides, or the red crepe myrtles, and then you go down a little further, and there's, I don't know what the names of the trees are, but can we have some consistency in the hub area, or do we bring this up at a different time to address this in the specific plan for the?
No, you can advise staff now that you want consistency in future projects, and we use this as the model to point to.
Okay, since this is
I
the
would agree
beginning.
with her. We talked about this back behind doors, that it would be nice to have a consistent
Certainly.
tree circle around the hub, and, like you say, maybe this would be the jumping off point for it.
Right, no, that's a very good point. Going forward there. So regarding your ground cover there, your trailing rosemary,
That's just the one plant that you look around town and it's,
well, I personally, I don't profess to know the difference between one or the other, so I wouldn't even know what to begin recommending. What's the rest of the commission feel about that?
And you don't need to recommend, you just need to decide that that one is inappropriate and you want an
Yes.
alternative.
to see if there would be better alternative, and maybe even to look at maybe some iceberg roses that are the drought tolerant, that give it some color and year-round beauty.
If that's the consensus of the commission and you continue this item, then that will be brought to the applicant's attention and they can address it and present that to you at your next meeting.
It would appear you did your research, so I'll support you there, so.
What about the tree theme around the hub? Do we want to direct staff to come up with some suggestions for the tree theme?
That's not part of this. At the end of the meeting, you can
Bring that up to
basically
you.
give that as consensus direction to staff, if that's the
That may
consensus.
change the
of-
landscaping plan here along the road, though.
If it does, then we'll relay that to the applicant as well.
All right, and then there's just one other plant then, one of the, it's the Boston ivy. It's good in Orange County, and it's good closer to the coast. My experience with it here is they planted it around the whole Menifee Lakes when they first planted Menifee Lakes. And most of it died out because it was just too hot here.
Or it froze.
Or froze. So the Boston ivy it's planned for the vines up the side, I believe, one of the sides. So those just little plant issues.
Right. Are there other concerns with the project itself? Okay. Don't have any myself, so at this point, we would entertain a motion to continue this.
And we recommend a date certain, that being the next available planning commission of September 10th.
September 10th. Okay. Anybody care to make the motion?
Go ahead.
I'll move that we continue to September 10th.
A second?
All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
With direction for the plant changes and suggestions on trees.
Yes.
I can add one point to the tree issue. When they came in with their landscaping plan, we were kind of kicking back and forth the idea of either mimicking the trees on the Menifee medical side, so on the other side of Hahn Road, versus using the trees that are in the Newport Town Square. And I believe we use the ones on the Menifee medical side since they're next to each other. Perhaps that's something that you could discuss and decide on which one you'd like to go with.
The applicant will provide us with their opinion on the situation, and then we'll present that to the commission.
Maybe they could have pictures of options, the different trees we can look at.
Yes.
That'd be great.
Do you have a comment?
So-
You've already made the motion.
Well, we have made our motion. Is it, go ahead. Okay. We are going to be continuing the item though, sir.
Okay, that being said, I was going to say that we would certainly agree to whatever you decide regarding the letter, the matter in the letter that came yesterday. We'd be fine with whatever was decided, and happy to change a few plans, but we'd really like to vote tonight.
Ms. Biggs, without a determination on that letter, can we leave that as an open-ended condition? Reopen the public?
Well, you're still open.
We're still open, so I mean, we can
Still
still change the decision.
Yeah, there's no, I mean, the issue is it has to be addressed and we have to get the words right, and it has implications down the line for other projects that will be coming through the city, and we need not to be rushed into that, is what it comes down to.
I'm not trying to rush you, we're just happy to comply with whatever you decide.
I understand, and so, yeah, the recommendation then would be all the things you said, plus resolving the Native American concerns.
All right.
And you foresee that legally that'll be resolved within 2 weeks?
I think it can be, yeah. It's not an issue that we haven't addressed before, but just looking at it, I'd like a little bit of time to think it through before we, in fact, make the change. And we need to know whether the Saboba tribe is also okay with that. If they are, then we're probably fine. But this has been a very difficult path to walk between the two tribes that have some interests here. And this is a project, of course, within a specific plan that's already been approved, and all those kinds of things. But we do want to keep good relations with our cultural heritage here, and I think we need the time to resolve it.
Okay. All right. All right, next on the agenda, 10.1, discussion on planning case PAR 2014-184, a hotel located on Cloud Drive. Mr. DeClaire, you have something to show us?
We're going to have Lisa Gordon give the staff report on this.
Good evening. I'm presenting a pre-application review for a hotel in the New Hub specific plan. The project site is located just north of the Hope Medical Building, west of the 215 freeway, and south of Salt Creek, and east of of Hahn Road. The pre-application review is an application for a preliminary review of a hotel proposal in the New Hub specific plan. The project site is bisected by two planning areas of the New Hub specific plan. The project site is highlighted in pink there. You can see that it's in planning area 1, which is for retail and commercial uses and allows a hotel with a plot plan approval. And it's also in planning area 3, which has a different set of development standards and is more, the land uses are more geared towards business or industrial park, but a motel is allowed with a plot plan. This is the site plan, the most recent one. It is different from the ones from the site plan that was provided in your agenda package. This was received Friday, and I believe Jennifer Allen provided it to you in a red folder. This is the proposed floor plan and elevation, and again, I apologize, this was not ready in your agenda package. It was just recently received. And the applicant is here to provide any additional information you may require. There is no recommendation from staff other than that we conduct the open to the public workshop and provide feedback to the project applicant.
I have a question of staff. How many stories is the tallest medical building in the hub right here? Is it 3?
I don't know, I'd have to look into that.
You know the height of the tallest building?
No.
The property owners here, they can probably attest to that. Go up to the mic, please, sir. Go up to the mic, please, sir. State your name for the record, please.
My name is Ron Hartley, and the height in here is a total of 54 feet, the highest building, and we're proposing 40, 46, 42?
47, I thought.
It's in compliance with
Okay.
this specific plan.
What was that?
Thank you. You have more, Lisa?
This is a workshop. We anticipate that the applicant will have some comments in regards to the proposal. The primary issue, I would believe, would be the aesthetics of the building, because that has been your issue for the hub for every workshop and every project that's come before you in this hub area. You have been provided with a black and white drawing of the proposed elevation. In my opinion, having seen only this very briefly, there are alternatives that the Holiday Inn Express and Suites have used in other communities that are a little bit more aesthetically pleasing and more decorative than what is proposed here. But that is the very point behind the workshop, is to give input to the applicant about the project and make suggestions to them as to how they may alter their plans to make you, as the commission that would ultimately make a decision on it, how it would make you more comfortable.
I have a question on the, just from this here. Can we talk to the, ask the applicant questions? The applicant can come up to the podium? No one wants to come.
Rock, paper, scissors? We'll be nice.
And your name?
My name is Joey Blagg, and I'm representing the landowner.
Does this represent somewhat a schematic of the architecture, or is this just a?
It does, and you mentioned earlier that you've seen the Holiday Inn exterior elevations in a different fashion that was maybe more decorative. But this year, in January of this year, they have issued a new prototype exterior elevation called the Evolution Plan, and that's what's represented on that page. There hasn't been one built yet anywhere in California, but that's their new prototype that they're expecting all new franchisees to comply with, unless there's a architectural issue within the local community that requires them to do something different. So we're starting at that point, and we'll certainly take your suggestions.
Do you have I will give you, this building, although it may be their recent decision to make it a prototype, it is one I've seen before. It was one that was proposed in a city that I worked in previously, city of 29 Palms, out in the desert. The city had requested, and the applicants at that point in time were very cooperative in enhancing the architecture of the building. This is a level between what staff had been asking for and what they had originally been proposing. So what you'll see here is a variety of colors, some depth to it. Along the left-hand side, there's quite a bit of relief. You've got a decorative portico in front of the structure. You've got the arch above and in front of that portico and so forth. You've got, unfortunately, typical landscaping for the desert community, and hopefully we will have better than that since it is in the hub, and Commissioner Sobek has expressed the Commission's concern for landscaping. But this is simply one illustration of how additional architectural enhancements to the structure could be achieved for this kind of a structure and still maintain the basic footprint to that. None of the changes that are shown here, I believe, resulted in any kind of a change to the basic floor plan of the building itself. And again, this was out in 29 Palms, and I know of other communities that have demanded more. I'm not suggesting that you demand more, but this is simply an illustration of what could be done with the basic floor plan.
Well, I'm not going to speak for the entire commission, but we're definitely, you know, in favor of opportunities and creating, you know, businesses and, you know, a hotel is definitely something that the city needs, but this really needs a lot of help, frankly.
I apologize for the interruption. I'd really like to remind you, though, that the edge of the
elevations that we'll be
building.
seeing, right,
Yeah.
I understand. So where I was headed was, you know, the two sides that are obviously going to be seen, aside from the freeway, probably the north wall, depending on, well.
Yeah, we didn't provide
Beaver
you with
does.
an elevation from the north side, but
Yeah.
looking at the floor plan, you can see that there's a meeting room, and that meeting room is only single story, so there's an articulation in the elevation. There's 3 floors above and 1 below that protrudes out to the north.
So
And there's
conceivably like a tile roof of some kind that would.
exactly, it'll be a decorative. And there's a pre-function area that's kind of radiused, and that's kind of decorative in that regard around that side.
I would make the suggestion that you look at, there's the building coming in here, the dialysis center, you notice we had them put a lot of stone on it and natural it up a little bit. The steakhouse, just about every other project that's come in here, Menifee has a somewhat of a more natural rural feel to it. That's like the countryside marketplace. That's kind of the feel we're going through. And while I travel several states and there are places for this modern design and it does fit and it's nice, it's probably not the Menifee design. So I would suggest you look at some of the other design options with more of the natural elements and a little more depth and architecture to it. That really is, not just you, but every project that comes through, that's the theme really that we encourage.
Of course. That's the DaVita dialysis?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And we're certainly not saying cover the entire
No,
4-story
no.
building with veneer stone. That would be incredibly expensive, but just offer something to break up the walls and to give some relief and colors and variation. I mean, just the top alone here, there's no architectural relief on the roof. There's no.
No, but it's
Yeah,
it's
the
quite a
parapet's all-
departure from what they've done in the past.
Yeah, it's definitely looks like something out of the 60s.
Now, I'm looking on my phone, lots of pictures of them and, see, they have a lot, well, not that so much, but a lot of them have, I'm not seeing, it looks like pretty flat across the front. We're looking for more, depth
Yeah.
and
Okay.
on different levels, so.
Maybe
Can I take it from your comments that if we came in with a submittal that had this exterior elevation, that you'd probably reject it?
Sounds
I'm concerned about the 4th floor. We went over this on the opposite side of the freeway. I've done research between here and Temecula. Most all the hotels along the freeway are 3 stories, except for the Embassy Suites that's in Temecula. It is much higher, but it sits down, so you don't see it sticking up when you're getting off the freeway there. I have a question for you. Is a lot of questions I've been getting from a few people in the community is, do we have a need here for a hotel? Have you done marketing research to see the need here?
It's interesting that you say that, because we've just completed a market study and we're going through the results of that now.
Okay.
But yes, we did.
I would be interested. Some of the fears
Speak to that.
of the residents is if you don't fill it up, you would sell it to a lower chain that could possibly be not what the quality that we would want in this area. I don't know how often that happens. I don't know the history and how that happens in the hotel business. That's a big concern. We've had another hotel proposed just across the freeway.
Oh, okay.
And so I'm looking at it like, do we have a need for this much? We definitely have assets here that are being underutilized, such as the golf course. If people were to come out and play golf here and they wanted to stay for the weekend and be in a tournament, we don't have a nice place to stay. I just want to make sure we can fill those rooms. I have also heard from hotel owners that I've talked to in Marietta and Temecula when I made my phone calls, that they do fill up most every weekend, their rooms, and that this could be a spillover area. So I'm looking at some positives and some negatives. I'm looking at, yes, you have the freeway to the east, and so you've got it turned where that's the end, where there's probably not a lot of windows to look out. But if you did, I don't know how this would work for you, but I mean, there is a nice view of the golf course.
Yeah, this was more oriented for sun.
Okay.
Because the rule of thumb is that if you have the sun shining into the west windows, that's the worst condition you can
That's
get.
true. That's true. Very
So this
hot.
was more oriented for best sun exposure, or least sun exposure, let's put it that way.
I have stayed at some Holiday Inn suites, and some of the inside. I wanted to ask you, are they all similar? Because like one that I stayed in along I-80 had just beautiful, beautiful woodwork. It was just very warm. It was very inviting. It was very high quality. It was like you were walking into a grand hotel in the lobby area and in the sitting area. And so I didn't know if they're all that way, if that's something specifically you do different.
Well, having constructed several, I can tell you that the past prototypes have been similar, and they do try to promote, uniformity through the hotels. However, with this new prototype that they've started in January, that the interior package is different per se, and it's quite a departure from the old that you've seen. And
They don't try to build these that are, like Commissioner Thomas was saying, that have the personality of the city in which they build these. I mean, this is like, it's very, I agree, looks like something out of the 60s or more the modern, which I could see in San Francisco. I can see maybe in LA, but here in Menifee,
Okay.
I can comment on that because I travel a lot, and Holiday Inn just took over another hotel and remodeled it. The inside is gorgeous. It's natural wood with modern stuff, and the way that they've localized is they put pictures of the local murals of the local city, and it really does kind of personalize it to the city.
Tie it into the community.
Yeah, and are you committed to Holiday Inn here? Is that what you're planning on, or is that just an idea?
Yes.
Yes, okay, yeah.
I would like to speak to the 4 stories, though. As it's been pointed out before, I think the Hahn Medical Building is 57 feet, and this is actually, it would be around, or 54 feet, and this would be about 5 or 6 feet shorter, even though it's an additional story.
I just don't believe we're a city ready for anything more than 3 stories.
Okay?
All I'd like to say is that I like the concept, I like the way that you laid out and made use of the property. And like you say, it's a practical way to do it because of the sun. And then I saw the way you did this. It's kind of tell with no elevations, no landscaping.
Right.
What you've given us. So I'm looking forward to seeing something in the future. If it's something like Mr. Claire's, the picture showed, or, something comparable where we can actually get a feel for it, because it's just kind of hard to get a feel for what you have on this drawing.
Well, right, and this is, of course, very preliminary, and
Yeah.
we were listening keenly when you were talking about establishing a standard, if you will, for landscaping around the hub, and we would pay attention to that, of course, when we develop a landscape
That
plan.
would only enhance your facility.
Exactly,
too.
yeah, and we would pay close attention to that were it, incorporated.
It sounds like in general, we're receptive to the idea of the hotel. We just need to spice up the architecture and
Okay.
spend a little bit more time and help us believe that it's part of the community and not just another building dropped in, you know?
If you're looking for a statement to take back so you don't have to build this feature, you have it.
Thank you.
Yeah, but look around at the successful and the newer buildings and the themes, and I think you'll find what we're looking for.
Okay, any other comments? Okay.
I
Thank-
would
thank
like,
you.
I would like to see the marketing research, if you, like, you know, or
I'm-
share a little bit with us on that. I know that's just been a big concern, that people are afraid that if you don't fill the rooms, you sell it, and then to maybe a lesser
Okay,
type of motel.
all right, take that comment, thank you.
I didn't make it flow.
I was just discussing with Commissioner Thomas, and I'll share with the rest of the commission, it's, you know, this is kind of a hard one, because, at least for me, because, you know, the county kind of slipped in that Han Professional Building, and that's pretty plain Jane. The building next door, what's that called?
Hope Medical Building?
Hope.
Yeah, that's a little more.
So that's got some more architecture to it, but, you know, to ask for something that's extremely agrarian,
Mhm.
you know, to match Countryside Marketplace, it's like, you know, now we're sticking a completely different product in with all these other buildings, so I don't think we're saying go
Not- yeah,
that
not total
extreme.
country, yeah.
We still want it to blend with what's in here, we don't want it to stick out like a sore thumb, but it definitely needs a little bit of help.
Even something like that, that's softer
Right.
than.
It's just hard, it's just really hard to see with these elevations, frankly. I mean, if there's even some color on here, we could see. some
Yeah, there
depth.
is on the design website, there is some color renderings of the prototype elevations. It might give you a little better feel for it, but we'll provide those if we're gonna try to stick with this. Otherwise, we'll start modifying.
And you're certainly more than welcome to come back and do it in the workshop. There's no reason to force the cart and to keep,
Okay.
you know, force it to an application. We want to work with you, we want to figure out how to make this work.
After you come up, I'll show you some pictures of some Holiday Inns that
Sure.
kind of give you an idea. And as far as the market stuff goes, like I say, I travel a lot of cities, and the hotels that I see are booked up, I'm talking, I can't even get in sometimes, are usually around commercial areas. And as soon as across the street develops in the, I'm just,
The hub?
the
or
hub,
no,
not the hub, the
Town center.
town center, there will be a lot of professional need for this hotel. I don't think we'll have any problem filling it, really. I really don't.
I agree, but this as a standalone project, this is a lot for Menifee, so we gotta kind of take our time with it, I think.
Well, and if you look at the industry for what they call limited service hotel, of which this is proposed, fits into, Holiday Inn Express and Hampton Inn are the two leaders in the industry in California and in the nation. So they do better than any other hotels
Well,
in the market.
And something I did want to mention too is, I'm glad that you added some meeting rooms, because I think that is something that is needed here. For, with those, like for wedding receptions, is that what those are
Banquets
used for?
and anything.
Banquets?
Well,
Business
yeah,
meeting.
a number of reasons, but
Okay,
yes.
but they're big enough to be used for those types of, because I know that's a need here. So.
Okay,
Any other comments, questions? All right, thank you, sir.
all right, thank you.
All right, I think I folded it up somewhere. I don't have one. Just couldn't find it when I wanted it. All right, Mr. Leclerc, you have additional comments tonight?
No, sir.
All right, are there commissioner comments?
I have two, after, anyone else have some?
I have one, it's basically not a comment, it's a question of staff. It just dawned on me, I think it's been about 2 years since we had a project, I'm trying to remember, over by Romoland, it was bare land, but it was like a construction company parking their equipment, and then we gave them an extension of 2 years to build the road. I was wondering if you can give us any progress on that, have they,
Is that Kiewit?
are they moving forward?
No, I think you're talking about the Dawson's Contractor Storage Yard on Dawson Road, south of Ethanak.
It's next door to Kiewit.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
They submitted a letter about a couple months ago stating that they were going to vacate the property, and they weren't going to pursue their plot plan anymore. So, and I believe our code enforcement department followed up and they had vacated.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Thomas?
Yeah. On this correspondence we received on Cimarron Ridge, I just want to make sure this is going for a EIR. We haven't seen this before, right? That this is not any kind of project that's come before us, it's just in the pre-stages?
Yes, you would have seen this is the second notice of preparation that's been sent out for the Cimarron Ridge specific plan and track maps
Oh, in
and
May,
EIR.
okay. So
The first one was submitted in May, and then after further review of the proposal, it was determined that a general plan amendment would be required to modify the circulation element of the general plan. So they sent out the notice of preparation for the environmental impact report again to include that general plan amendment to the circulation element.
And what kind of approvals do they have so far already on this project?
They have no approvals for the project that's being analyzed in the EIR. They have, back in the early 90s, the county approved 2 track maps on the property that have since expired. And then later in around 2000, 2003, the county approved another track map that's still valid, but the developer has no plans on moving forward with that. It's a very small track that was meant to supplement the 2 tracks the county approved in the early 90s. So they have one approved track, but not for what they want to do now.
So it's a fresh project then?
Yes.
And so the land, it's going to require general plan amendment. The land currently is zoned, is designated as what?
Residential.
Oh, wait, I think, was it R?
There will be 2 general plan
R1.
amendments.
Okay.
One general plan amendment to designate the property under the general plan land use designation of specific plan, because they're processing a specific plan. And then the second general plan amendment is to amend the circulation element.
Have they, and I apologize if I forget, have they done any kind of workshops on this for us in the past?
There was a scoping meeting done with the first notice of preparation, but no workshops before the planning commission that I recall.
I would have you encourage them to come before the commission with some kind of a workshop before they get knee-deep into this.
We have suggested that to them in the past. We will bring it up with them again.
That would be a strong suggestion.
Okay.
The second question is on the development code, Charles. Kind of in that same vein, I want to propose to the commission that maybe we put on these larger projects a pre-application review requirement of some kind. What I've heard from people is, we've spent this money on elevations, we've committed these much funds, and they come before us and we may not like the project. We could prevent that whining by them being required to do some kind of a pre-application review.
The downside to that is that that the application, that it's another level of the review that costs them money in order to go through it. And for a lot of projects, they're comfortable and you are comfortable with what they propose, so that pre-application is simply a process that involves staff, time, and money that doesn't resolve or doesn't result in any changes to the proposal.
I guess you're making the assumption that we're quote, happy with it. I don't know if I'd agree with that statement.
A lot of the projects you would be happy with.
Would be happy with. There's been a lot of projects that come before me that I have not been happy with.
But not so much unhappy that you couldn't put a condition or make comments as you did tonight that would resolve the issue. I'm concerned, one of the points I'm trying to make in this new development code is to streamline the process a bit and allow it to move more smoothly. Anytime that you require an additional review, they've got to submit material, so they've got to prepare and go to the expense of the preparation of that material. It's got to be submitted, reviewed, shuffled in order for it to be presented to the commission. some kind of report of some level has to be prepared. It has to then go to the planning commission. Then there has to be a report, response, something of it afterwards. All that takes time and all that takes money for the
Let me
applicant.
ask you, we just had one tonight. We had one a couple weeks ago. These companies choose to do it. So what wording could we put in that would encourage them to do something as simple as this? I mean, this was
Certainly,
smart.
we could put in encouragement. Certainly, we could do that, yes.
I mean, yeah, I mean, this was smart for him. If he had spent $100,000 on elevations and we just, smashed it, that's not good business. So,
Right, we can certainly, and we will bring that language back to you.
I had one comment about this document that I received, and that was the location needs to be revisited as far as the location of the property with respect to Getz Road. And then the maps that are on that CD are really outdated. We need to get something a little bit more current. I drove around that site, and that was why, when I was trying to marry up the documents with what I was looking at, there seems to be some kind of a disconnect there, and I was kind of hoping that maybe we could get updated material with respect to the map and description of the location of the project.
I did have one concern I wanted to bring up regarding another last-minute letter from Pechanga. What can we do in order to get them to work with us a little bit better? I don't even know how many times we've had to delay a project, delay somebody wanting to do business in this city because of their laziness. What can we do to get them to play nice and be good partners with the city? They're
Nothing.
not helping us.
Nothing.
There's
They are
been,
an independent, autonomous entity that both state law and policy of the city have established that they have whatever opportunity that they have to respond in whatever time frame that they choose. If it's sufficiently in front of the meeting so that you can consider it, as you did tonight, asking for further clarification, fine. If it comes in after a decision, then they miss their window of opportunity. But there's no mechanism I am aware of that we could possibly use other than just being as friendly and as giving of information to them as we could, as early in the process as we could, with, again, encouragement to them to respond by such and such a date. But if they choose not to do it, we don't have a mechanism to force them.
it's been my experience with there is an adversarial relationship between the two bands that's spilling out
Certainly.
into what's going on here. I remember specifically asking them to try to get together and reach some compromise to where they could approach us as a unified front. And then now we're seeing this.
Well, I think.
I don't know where we are with that.
What I'm hearing Charles say is that it's a policy matter and that we need to send a message to the city council that we need to figure out a way to create a policy that draws a line in the sand as best and legally as possible so that we don't have this happen time and time again. Eventually, the message is going to get out that every time a project comes to Menifee, you might as well just account for Pechanga throwing in a last-minute curveball and giving you another delay, thus causing more carrying costs for your project.
Either them or
It's a
Saboba.
cost that's hurting our city. So I would just send a message to urge the council to try and figure that out, if we could.
We will draft something and let you see it, and then you can act upon that, and whatever you act upon can be forwarded to the council.
Okay. Any other comments? Anybody care to make a motion to adjourn?
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, all right. Good night.